Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. Here we are again. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega, and we're here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about happiness and substance abuse. So, George, why don't we have you lead us off into what happiness has to do with substance abuse?
Okay, this is good. This is good because basically, we start off with the idea that the question: why do people take dangerous substances, whether it's alcohol to excess or recreational drugs?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why do people endanger their lives, their livelihoods, their families? You know, their whole lifestyles. In order, why are they doing this, right? And the answer, the very clear, very strong answer is they're not happy enough. They're not fulfilled enough. They're not content enough. They're not satisfied. They're seeking these things through the medication, through the drugs, through the alcohol, whatever. And it's a very clear, connection. Otherwise, why would they be taking such risks?
Sure.
So that the happiness substance abuse connection is extremely strong, and this can really we can, this is what the show is about. We're going to pretty much explore how understanding this can help us. We've got a very great problem here in the United States. About 80% of the people who are incarcerated on drug-related offenses, and I mean we've got many people incarcerated. So this could be
costs a lot of money.
Oh yeah. So let's explore. I guess before we get into like happiness is the answer. Why do people that abuse various substances? Why don't they stop?
Well, I think it's the pleasure principle. I mean, happiness is pleasurable, and so it's normal to seek pleasure. It's something that we all like. I mean, what do you prefer, pleasure or pain? The unfortunate thing about substance abuse is that pleasure turns into pain, and the reason it does is because you can't get enough pleasure, or at least you can't get it long enough to have it be, once and for all for you. So you seek more of it, and the more you seek, the more is not enough, and then you need even more, and that's where it gets out of hand and becomes a problem. So it's, for example, let's say you had one drink once a week, or whatever it was that you did, even maybe once a day, or a glass of wine with a meal. That might be fine. But when you finish off a bottle or two every day and you seek the company of others just to drink, that's where it becomes, and you can't find your way home, and that's where the pleasure principle has taken over your life, and addiction has become the norm. And because we can't stop it, it's an addiction. That's the problem.
Right, and also what happens is that with a lot of chemicals, a lot of agents, you take a certain amount and you feel the effect, but if you take that amount consistently over time, it just won't be enough to give you that same effect. So people take more, and then the additional problem becomes that many of these substances are either psychologically or actually physically addictive. So that with the physical addiction, they may want to stop, they may very much want to stop, but their body becomes dependent upon these substances and won't allow them. So that's why it's so important to give them the tools to be able to seek what they're really looking for in a way that'll allow them to have the courage and the motivation to do what's necessary to overcome the physical and psychological addictions to these drugs and find their happiness and their satisfaction in ways that are not just healthier for them, but healthier for everyone.
Right. As you're talking, George, and you bring up some very valid and very important points on addiction and this kind of consumption, there's a reason that all of us, I mean, who's got no problems in their life? Nobody. We all have problems, but for some of us, that unhappiness, when it becomes unhappiness, when we translate having a problem into unhappiness, then there's pain associated with the problem. And problems are a way of life, but pain doesn't have to be that kind of pain. And that unhappiness is what people are trying to get rid of. So when they take a substance and they they drink too much, they no longer are unhappy. And so they've eliminated what they think is the problem. The only problem is they've created others, and they've only temporarily postponed the problem, and they haven't eliminated anything. So it's unhappiness that's really causing this. It's the idea that they get started because they're not happy about something, and so to find their way towards happiness or away from unhappiness, thinking they're going towards happiness, they're using these drugs, or they're using alcohol, or they're smoking. And I think that's the key, is that you have to realize that there's a certain amount of unhappiness, and using these addictive substances is not only a bad way to deal with trying to become happy, but a very sad way, one that's going to lead to more and more pain, maybe even hurting others, and being totally out of your own power, being totally helpless, really, and becoming probably a victim.
Yeah, and as we attempt to kind of understand how the different treatment centers, how the different therapists who work with people that are abusing substances try to get them to stop, it's interesting. I haven't explored this in great detail, but I'm certain that they don't approach it from the standpoint of happiness. I'm certain that they may approach it from the standpoint of responsibility, that you're wrong to do this and you've got to stop because it's affecting those around you. They may approach it from other avenues, but since this science of happiness research is so new and so it's not very well known by people, I'm certain that this kind of treatment of demonstrating to these people, hey, what you want is happiness, that's why you're doing this, and we have the tools. We can teach you tools that will get you to where you want to be and beyond, because a lot of times these chemicals will get a person, they'll feel some mild pleasure, but then their relationships suffer. There's a lot of negatives that go with it. So the idea is that moving away from the traditional methods that are generally used to try to move people away from drugs, to having both the therapists and the treatment centers and the clients understand that there is a better way, and happiness is that way.
Yeah, I'd like to add one point, and you're right, it is better. Maybe what would help them understand what we're talking about better is that when someone's unhappy, and this is a neurological fact, doctors will support this, when they're unhappy, their pain threshold is greater, so that they're affected to a greater degree by the very fact that they're unhappy. So when you're unhappy, you experience pain even more than when you're happy. When you're happy, the same stimulus will not be as painful to a happy person as it is to an unhappy person. So whether it's a circumstance, a situation, a breakup, a death, whatever it might be, your unhappiness is going to lead to pain, and your pain is going to be intolerable based on your unhappiness. And this is the catch-22. This is the issue. And so it becomes an addiction because of the unhappiness. So it's the unhappiness that was the cause.
That's an excellent point, Lionel, because and they start out off with unhappiness. As you say, they're less able to tolerate pain because of that unhappiness, and that's why they attempt dangerous and very unhealthy methods. So sure, as they're given the tools to become happier, their pain threshold will increase, and they'll be able to withstand these kinds of difficulties in their life that many happy people just accept, because life is imperfect, and happy people understand that. Happy people understand that our happiness isn't coming from the world in a sense, right?
Exactly. So George, how do you propose that people could become less addicted, less needy of these substances, and work on their happiness. I mean, you have some ideas on how they can do that?
Yeah, I think the first step is the person has to understand why they're taking the drugs. You know, and again, that it could be a series of steps. You know, I'm taking the drugs maybe to feel a new experience, maybe because, like, if they're a teenager, their family life is disturbing, or they're having problems with school or whatever. There are always reasons, but then if you follow that chain of reasoning, you know, through to its conclusion, it's always to, like, try to move away from some painful situation and try to move toward a more pleasant situation.
Sure.
So the first thing that needs to be done is to have them very clearly and strongly recognize that happiness is what they want. Happiness is that end goal to taking the drugs, and then, of course, that that there is a better way, that there are tools, there are tools already in existence that are very effectively can take them to where, you know, to that point of happiness they want to be.
Okay, so you're saying happiness can be a treatment method. That's what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
Well, is anything like that exist now?
Not for substance abuse, no. I mean, the only area where happiness is beginning to be used as a specific treatment method is this psychologist researcher from Italy, Giovanni Fava, has begun to introduce happiness as a therapy to prevent the reoccurrence of the relapse. You know, in other words, when people become better from various emotional symptoms, a lot of times they relapse to their former state. So he has actually demonstrated through a series of experiments that by helping people to become happier, that becomes a very potent tool to prevent those relapses. So while there is, you know, some research in that area, there is no program, no philosophy that's basically using happiness as a treatment for substance abuse right now.
Well, you know, as you're saying this, I remember I had a friend who had told me a number of months ago that he had quit smoking for a few days, and I said, hey, that's great. And what I offered him was, if he ever felt like smoking, to call me instead, you know, any time. So about a week later, I got a phone call, and he said, remember we had that discussion? Well, I really have a craving for smoking, so I started talking to him. Just being friendly, it was connection, you know. We probably spent a few minutes, and then he said to me, you know what? It's gone. I feel better. Just talking to you made me feel better. I'm not going to smoke. He had quit smoking for at least a month, and then I saw him again. I had actually seen him physically, and later on I said, hey, so how's that non-smoking doing? He said, well, smoking a little bit. I said, why? So at the end of our thing, I said, well, do you really want to quit? And he said, yeah. I said, you want to give me your pack of cigarettes, whatever you got left, and why don't you quit right now? I mean, I'm with him now. Okay, he said. I said, I don't want to do this unless you want to do, you know, you want to give them to me, you know. So he gave me the rest of his cigarettes. I took them. And I mean, what am I really saying here? I'm saying that I care. I care. You're my friend. If I can help you in any way, in a loving way, in a helpful way, that's what I'm offering. I can't really do much more than that. You know, I can't say, hey, I don't want you to smoke. I'm saying it the best way I can. And just maybe the fact that I hope that he handed over those cigarettes to me, and he knew I asked for them because I cared about him, maybe that was enough. Maybe that's what we need. Now, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think you raised a good point here, is even when you want to get rid of an addiction, it's not so simple. So once you let that addiction sort of take you over, physically, chemically, you know, and in many habitually, it becomes ingrained. So do you think happiness can actually help, you know, reprogram us?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And what you raised is very important, because, like, the existing groups for substance abuse, like Alcoholics Anonymous, work very well. I mean, there are chapters throughout, I imagine, the world. People attend the meetings sometimes on a daily basis. They work with I forget what sponsors, I guess, one-to-one relationships.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah. So the idea is that, like, with support, you know, whatever we want to do, whether it's like getting over drugs, overcoming some kind of loss, whatever, support is extremely useful. So it can be used. And yes, happiness as a method can be very potent, because again, we're not taught this. The reason that people who abuse drugs is because they were never taught a better way. Our schools aren't teaching this. Our parents aren't teaching this. I mean, the average level of happiness is 70% in the United States. I mean, certainly that's very marginal. So certainly, our parents don't teach their children what they don't know themselves. So the idea is like, we can teach them. I mean, and it's not, you know, the wonderful thing about this is that learning to become happier, as you and I very clearly know, is very easy. It can be done in a matter of months.
You know, George, as you're talking, you just gave me the idea. When I think of the prisons, and you're saying, and it's true, because I've been in prisons and I've done programs, 85% of the people in there are related to drugs. If they're not taking them, they're selling them, or they get caught, you know, being involved somehow. Would you imagine that if we just took, and it costs money to imprison people. It costs a lot of money, and some of these people are being imprisoned for a long time. And drugs cause other problems. They cause violence and murder and things like that. Could you imagine in our schools if we took a little of the money that we're going to need for prisons anyway, because we're going to need more and more prisons, so we just took a small portion and allocated that money, instead of future prisons, we spend it now on education, and I think we would see a decline in prison, because we would see a decline in abuse. But it's awareness, and if we're not aware, if we don't appreciate happiness, we're not aware it could do us any good, how can it do us any good?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
I mean, in some ways, happiness is a drug. At least I find it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't give it up. I'm addicted. But thank God it's a good drug.
It's the highest good, sure.
I'm not giving it up. I'm hooked. It has become a pattern. It's become programmed. It's a habit. But you know, like bad habits, you can practice something long enough where you realize the benefit of it, you appreciate it, and you don't give it up.
Okay.
You just use it more and more. And right now, maybe the only thing that could communicate that is you and I, you know, just by the fact that this works for us.
Right, because actually that's the challenge. That's the challenge. The answer is clear. I mean, happiness is the answer. That will just, you know, enable virtually anyone to eliminate their drug abuse habit. But then the challenge is, well, how do we get people to appreciate that? How do you get a person who's not, you know, because the problem, what we're facing is that in our society, money is valued, prestige, power, success is valued a lot. It's all over the media. It's basically, in a sense, what's taught in school.
We're addicted to it.
Yeah, and a lot of these things just have only a marginal influence on our happiness, especially money. A lot, you know, above the poverty level, it hardly matters. So the idea is to try to have them understand that, listen, these things that you're going for, these things that everyone is going for, aren't really what is so important to their happiness, and getting them to appreciate, yes, happiness is really what they want. Happiness is what should be their main focus in life, their central focus, and then they'll realize that learning the tools will enable them to access that pleasure. I mean, rather than seeking the pleasure from an agent that, again, will last only a certain amount of time, will create often more problems than it solves, then
Exactly.
they can appreciate the value of happiness as really what they want, and then be motivated to learn what it takes to do that.
Well, it's a good point, because the addiction, you know, you look for the pleasure, you get the pleasure, then you need more of it to fulfill the same space, and then you need more and more and more, and you get less and less and less out of it. So you get to the point where you can never get enough, and that's an addiction. And it's self-destructive. That's the other part of an addiction. Although happiness is an addiction, because it's pleasurable, it feels good, and so you want it, and you utilize it. The interesting thing about happiness as an addiction, if you want to refer to it that way, or maybe as a substitute addiction.
It's a great addiction.
Yeah, it's a great addiction.
It's the best addiction.
But with no bad effects. That's the point I want to make here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what's so bad about it? And actually, with just the opposite of bad, it's got great effects. It's got great positive effects. It puts you in charge of yourself. You feel self-esteem, which by the way, self-esteem is the issue of drugs, self-esteem. If you don't feel good about yourself, boom, you know, peer pressure, whatever pressure, you're into drugs. You're going to follow along with the crowd. And happiness is the best self-esteem method there is. And once you practice happiness, you're not so ready to follow what somebody else suggests you follow.
Oh yeah. And you know, Lionel, we were talking before the show about how to promote happiness in general, and we were talking about advertising and public service announcements. And I'm thinking, you know, this would be a wonderful way to promote this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Have a commercial. You know, an announcer comes on and says, you know, as people become happier,
right,
they earn more money, they become healthier, they have more friends, they marry more. You know, you give them all the benefits of happiness, and then a question, the announcer could ask the question, do you want drugs or do you want happiness? Something like that.
Oh,
So
I like
just
that.
really have the point really sink in. You know, because I mean, a 30-second commercial, it just really.
I agree. I think we should have it on, you know, January 1st or whatever, Rose Parade or, you know, Rose Bowl, and imagine, you know, instead of a beer commercial, we have a happiness commercial, because happiness is valuable. And if we don't appreciate it or see the value of it, how can we benefit from it? I think this is the problem. I mean, it's only lately that people are, what are we, the first happiness show in the world?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You know?
And I hope, yeah.
And so if it's just starting with us, although it's been around for 2,500 years, or maybe since the beginning of time, really, but when man started to think, that's when man started to realize happiness is accessible, but the thinking got in the way, because you can't think your way to happiness. You can only realize it. Happiness is a realization. You don't get there by thinking about it. You get there by being it. It's a process.
Right.
You know?
And for a lot of people, I think sometimes we have to redefine what happiness is. We have to, like, maybe define it in terms that is understandable to many people. Happiness as a substance. You know, you were saying it's an addiction. Happiness is a substance. We can define it that way.
Okay.
It's like what will bring us to where we want to be. It actually is where we want to be.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly, because it's within us. So if you know, we can never be anywhere else but where we are now. But we don't utilize that entirely. We're always trying to be somewhere else. That's the whole thing, isn't it? We're always trying to be somewhere else, always trying to find someone else, always trying to change something so we could finally be happy. And that's why drugs have appeared, because they were there to enable us to think that if we took them, things would get better. Or at least they'll get better for a while, but they don't get better. And if they stayed better, they'd be great, but they got worse.
Right. And you know, like, as happiness begins to be used as a treatment for drug abuse, we're going to find that it not only changes the lives of those who were addicted to drugs, you know, just totally changes them, but it'll also change the lives of the rest of us, because, you know, as research has demonstrated, as people become happier, we become more compassionate, we become more energetic, our relationships improve. I mean, it just improves us as people. So you would have people who are now, you know, in certain ways draining financial resources and are a danger to many of us, actually becoming more model citizens. I mean, you know, because also, you know, a lot of times, you know, when a person lacks something, right, and they make great mistakes in trying to achieve it, and they find the right way, a lot of times these people will actually be the greatest advocators for this method and the greatest practicers of this.
Yeah, it's true. I'm thinking about an author who passed away, Og Mandino. He was a great inspirational author. He wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World, as well as many other books. I had the privilege of having him on my radio show. Always wanted to meet him, but didn't. I loved the guy. I loved his work. He was an alcoholic, and he changed. And it was the alcohol abuse that, and when he finally overcame it, he wrote the most wonderful books in the world. But it was because of the despair and utter, you know, hopelessness and situation he found himself in, that he overcame, that he got his power. But the thing I want to mention is that where drugs, and you touched on this, where drug addiction could not only hurt yourself but affect everyone around you and your family, and in a more violent way, the society and the community. And a drug addict can be dangerous, but even a smoker could be bad with secondhand smoke, or any addiction. Drinking, you lose your job, you lose your family, you don't pay attention to your loved ones, you lose yourself. Happiness does everything in the opposite. The happier you become, the better off you are, but also everyone around you. So that's why it's a drug, and it works. It's like, was it the anti-drug?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, I've got another idea for promoting it. You mentioned some time ago about these homeless guys, and homelessness I think is somewhat connected with drug abuse a lot of times.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So they created this company. I guess they market drug shirts that say "Life is good."
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine.
I bought my grandson a hat. Life is good. That's what they did.
Yeah, and it's a message that everyone connects with, not just the homeless or people who abuse drugs. Now imagine, some drug abusers are getting together and coming out with a T-shirt. Happiness is the answer. That would be awesome, because they're looking for an answer.
Or even happiness is my drug of choice would be cute.
Yes, happiness is my drug, definitely. Oh yeah.
I think it is. I think, and the interesting thing, like any drug, you have to take it. You have to walk into a bar, you have to order the drink, and then you have to drink it yourself. Same with happiness. You have to concentrate on doing it, because if you don't feed it to yourself, where are you going to get that? If you don't remember to do it and you don't make it a habit, you're not benefiting from it.
Oh, yeah.
And it works. It really does. And I think that's great. So I hope all the smokers and drinkers and everybody, it's not you doing anything wrong. You could do something better for yourself and for those around you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And again, happiness can be a very powerful tool for helping people overcome any kind of substance abuse.
It is. Well, George, thank you. That was great. That's about all the time we have for you today. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. In the future, we're going to explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next week on The Happiness Show. And remember, think good thoughts, be happy, and live your life, enjoy it, because life is short.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.